Welcome back to the Reading Corner. Today we are finally covering Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. The Vanguard hero who, he's been there from the beginning. It was obviously going to be a part of this game. So, I'll discuss him more when I've read the lore segment, because I do have a few thoughts. So anyway, we have Fickle Banner. Scientific inspiration used by Bruce Banner could come from anywhere. There were famous stories, Newton's apple, Alexander Fleming's mould in the Petri dish. And then there are thousands of other little revelations that would never be told because they were just part of the everyday work of scientists all over the world. Like him. He had done some important work in the fields of gamma radiation, and he had also learned more about gamma radiation the hard way. Now he was trying to build both on that work and a life-changing accident. Becoming the Hulk had changed his life for the better and for worse, and most of the worst aspects had to do with a lack of control he had felt for years when becoming Hulk. Over time, he had gotten more control, but it was still a struggle. Eventually, he had an insight. What if he could control the infusion of gamma radiation into his body? Would it be possible to decide how much of a Hulk he wanted to be? The question had led to a series of experiments, and now Bruce thought he was on the verge of a real working prototype of a device that could absorb, contain, and channel gamma radiation. If so, it would be life-changing. So here he was, tinkering with the final adjustments to what he was calling the gamma belt. The fundamental idea of the belt was that it contained a reservoir of gamma energy that could be channeled into the wearer's body. He would never let anyone else use the belt, but if he could get it working, the transformation in Banner's life would be practically unthinkable. To have full control over the Hulk without worrying about the mindless rages that had occasionally overtaken him for decades now? Banner had always found the Hulk as much a curse as a gift. There were times when it was great to be a superhero, but when you woke up one morning and discovered that the Hulk had leveled part of a city during a fight, something had to change. So now, Banner was changing something. It was late at night, and the desert outside Banner's lab was quiet, save for the eerie whistle of the breeze in the spines of the saguaro cactuses. It was a strange, lonely sound, perfect to accompany the work of a strange, lonely man. He shut the window and put the belt on, testing it for a fit and making sure the gamma conduits were intact and not facing out. The gamma belt was designed to channel energy into the wearer's body without letting it escape anywhere else. Banner had done this by aligning the belt with conduits for the energy, and insulating the conduits in every direction except for a small seam where the belt was in direct contact with the wearer. In testing, with the belt tightened around a mannequin, the insulation had worked. Now he was going to find out if it worked on a real person. He tightened the belt and settled it into place around his waist. Then he tested the gamma detectors he had placed around the lab, making sure they were active. He'd arranged them to pick up any stray energy released when Banner activated the belt to become the Hulk. It was going to feel strange to become the Hulk that way. For so many years, it had been just a sudden internal process. Now, Banner was trying to sympathize it, channel it, and make it not quite so vulnerable to his emotional states. In a way, putting his transformation under the control of an external object felt like losing control all over it, even though the whole point of the gamma belt was to have better control over the Hulk. And possibly to make him stronger. Banner had run the math hundreds of times, and it was possible the gamma belt would be able to create a stronger Hulk. What would that mean for him? Banner wasn't sure, but he was about to find out. He hadn't told anyone about the gamma belt, mostly because he didn't want to have a conversation about why he was building a device to do what he could already do. And the reason for avoiding that conversation was that Banner would have to admit that he wanted the belt to give him a kind of control over the Hulk that he never felt he could maintain. In other words, he didn't want to have a conversation about how he couldn't control the Hulk. Okay, he thought, time to see if I've solved that problem. He started a video camera set into one wall of the lab. Banner, gamma belt test. First go around with a full energy reservoir. He stepped up to the center of the lab where he'd marked out a spot for the transformation. Earlier that day, he'd moved all of the lab furniture and equipment away from it. Commencing, he tapped control on the belt. Now. Lights on the belt flared to life as it poured gamma energy into the conduit encircling Bruce's waist. He felt the transition like he always did. Wrenching, painful, but also filling him with a sense of limitless power. Along with that came something even more important. Ease. Where Banner was nearly crippled by anxieties about how other people felt about him, Hulk didn't care what anybody thought. He was Hulk. He looked around Banner's lab, then down at the belt around his waist. How did Banner design it so it didn't break? Don't need the belt, Hulk grumbled. But he knew Banner had designed the experiment to help him, so Hulk reluctantly went ahead to do the rest of the steps Banner had planned in advance. At least they sounded like fun. First, Hulk went outside the lab, trudging down a dirt road that led to a box canyon. Banner had set up instruments along one wall of the canyon. Hulk was supposed to stand at the other wall and clap. Banner thought he could measure Hulk's strength this way. Hulk just wondered what the belt would do. He stood by the canyon wall and he looked at the instruments maybe 20 yards away. It was a narrow canyon. He took a deep breath, narrowed his eyes, and spread his arms wide. Hulk's clap usually caused a shockwave strong enough to break windows, flip cars, and send Hulk's enemies flying. But when he brought his palms together, he heard the shattering crack. He knew right away that the clap was different. A shockwave crashed against the far canyon wall like a bomb had gone off, collapsing a wall into a rock slide that buried Banner's instruments like they were never there. Then the wave rebounded and knocked Hulk into a wall at his back, hard enough to stun him, and bring thousands of tons of rock slabs crashing down on his head. Dazed, Hulk shut his head and flexed to push the rocks away, only to find that none of the rocks was touching him. A glowing sphere of gamma energy had surrounded him, projected from the belt. When Hulk moved, the sphere moved, shifting the rock falls so he could stand. Then it faded away. Hulk looked down at the belt. Its reservoir was partly full. Hulk looked across the far wall. One of the instruments had survived the rock slide. Its microphone stuck up between the rock slabs, and attached to it was a camera. Hulk walked to the camera and pointed down to the belt. See that? Then he decided to do another strength test and see what happened. He went outside, looked up to make sure no planes were going overhead, and jumped. He peaked a few thousand feet in the air, coming back down a short distance from his jump point with an impact that shook the windows of the lab. The arms of the Saragoro cactuses waved. The belt was 2/3 full. Hulk grinned. Now he was going to try something even harder. He picked up a car parked near the lab and threw it into the air in a high arc. Before it could land, he thundered after it, leaping as it fell and smashing a fist into it before it could hit the ground. The car exploded into hundreds of pieces, its gas tank rupturing into a ball of flame that Hulk fell through back to the ground. He roared as he landed, an exuberant roar that echoed out over the empty desert. There was something Banner hadn't thought of. Becoming a Hulk, he had essentially given off enough gamma radiation to refill the belt, which in turn had fed the new radiation back into him. The dose would have killed him, if he hadn't already survived a larger dose of gamma radiation years ago. Instead, it made him, well, hulkier. He was a different Hulk, the real Hulk, the pure monster. He didn't care what Banner thought. Banner was weak. Hulk would rub Banner's face in it once and for all. Gonna show Banner, he growled to himself. Show him how puny he is when Hulk gets bigger. Hulk stomped back into the lab and looked at the camera. Inside, he felt Banner's fear and worry, deep inside his head. He bared his teeth in a grin. See, Banner? More gamma, more Hulk. Gonna do it again. That's really not a good idea. It was Banner's voice. Shut up, Banner. No, you don't understand. If too much gamma radiation builds up, it could... Shut up! Hulk punctuated the roar with a double-fisted blow to the floor, coming down with all his strength. The blast wave tore the concrete slab under the lab building to pieces and shattered equipment in every room. Sparks flew and cables tore out of the wall a moment before the row of tables smashed into the far side of the lab, breaking the window Banner had carefully shut before beginning the experiment. The roof started to come down, and Hulk roared as it destroyed itself over its head and shoulders. Hulk, no! Humiliating Banner felt good. Hulk wasn't done. Watch Banner, he snarled, picking up a steel beam from the ceiling and smashing it to the ground, feeling bolts and fragments of concrete ricochet up from the floor of his invulnerable skin. Yes, he would tear the lab to the ground. Then... Banner collapsed to the floor among the smashed remains of his instruments. Feeling the Hulk recede like a great tide of rage in his mind, he was breathing hard and saying no, 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 until he realized he was saying it. Then he stopped. Only the sound of the lab was the whistling of the Sogo spines in the night breeze. Out in the desert, pieces of the car were burning slowly down. In his hands, he held the broken remains of the gamma belt. Ricocheting fragments of the lab table had punctured through the electronics. returning him instantly to his briner state. Interesting, he said. He hadn't considered that possibility. He looked from the smashed remains of a gamma belt to the smashed remains of a lab, then now to the dirt track leading to the canyon. The remains of a car still burned at the edge of the desert. There was a lot of things he hadn't considered. It was time to get back to work. So that little segment basically gives you a rundown of the abilities the Hulk has in-game, and a lot of them he is able to lump vast distances, the clap that sends like a destructive force. Hulk's ultimately a melee build, which means I suck at him. I suck at the melee builds for these. The only one I've been able to get a handle on with the melee is the Thing, and that's because for some strange reason the Thing feels more tankier than the Hulk. Maybe I'm just using this. I mean, the Hulk may be the strongest there is, but in my hands, he's the shittiest hero there is. Okay, so yeah. Conclusion. I don't like the Hulk. He is not fitting my playstyle at all. I will not be playing him on a regular basis. Not unless some questline forces me to, or when there's a new little segment for him. But yeah, thanks for listening. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.